Thank you so much, everybody, for taking out the time and coming. The whole point of today's conversation is to actually take everybody's stance on how we are actually coping up with the whole crisis of COVID-19. Secondly, what can be the measures taken, or what can be the way forward in terms of education sector as teachers? How do you see the classrooms shaping up after this? What effects and what changes do you actually foresee after this whole crisis gets to an end or comes to?
Hello, everyone, and I'm, in the UK since, no, I just know, but I came back from Saudi Arabia last September, for, unfortunately, probably, as well, politically, the reason is for Brexit and dual citizenship. That's the most important aspect. Otherwise, I couldn't come back in the late time. So anyway, I'm doing at the moment supply as a supply teachers, and I've been working several schools across Birmingham City mainly. Okay, and recently, just before outbreaking and the closure of the schools, I was in a special school, and special school, they have a different guidelines. So it's still confusing at the moment because some of my former colleagues, or still colleagues because I'm in touch with them, we have a WhatsApp group, they're still working in a very risky situation. So we don't know if students have some, particular problems that could be connected with this coronavirus, but it's not easy to understand how it's going to be. The government is trying to do all the best, but it's quite, I'm honest with all of you, it's not really active, or could be more active when it was the time, because as Italian, as you probably know, Italy was 3 weeks behind us, and they didn't take any action where they were supposed to do. Okay, I was even following, for example, Saudi Arabia. That's what I know because I'm still in touch with some other colleagues that are still working there. When the coronavirus happened, they stopped immediately, they closed immediately the university there, and for security. That is what, unfortunately,
so the border to Bahrain, they closed that.
Yeah. So the reality is special schools and all schools across the UK are still open. It doesn't mean that they're closed completely. And union now try to, make sure that we are not at risk because we are key workers, okay?
What you mean by the schools are still open? Like people are still going out? Or it's virtual now?
They are not completely closed. They are supposed to offer classes to key workers, children. That means doctors, nurses, drivers, whatever, the social, hierarchical structure that are involved into. So, and teachers, like, permanent teacher, they are supposed to work for them. So that is the point. They do rota, so they work maybe once a week or twice a week, but it's difficult, The government is trying to, they call measure, like monitor or whatever, but it's not acceptable from my point of view. This is quite, I understand their own, way of acting as well, but it's not what it should be. That is what I'm quite concerned of that. And because, as I said, some teacher can be at risk, and there are not any testing as well, for that.
In Australia, the childcare is still working. They are still open. Everything else is closed, and the essential services are still being provided. So childcare is available. The government has not closed the childcare. Toddlers to after school care for kids.
Okay.
In the essential workers, just the essential workers.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same.
This is the maximum level of shutting the world down.
Exactly. That's why they're not really calling it a lockdown here. They can't. It's lockdown as such, They have to have key workers working because obviously these are the ones they're also providing care to the elderly.
Yeah.
Like Marzia, if there's special education, these children definitely need one-on-one.
Education cannot be shifted to online.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're trying to find out, to figure out if there are some particular, workers, as you said, probably social care workers, that can, provide help to those students that they are, honestly, because I work with them, they are quite, they could have mental issues, they could have, autism, they could have anything that is related, because they're special kids. And to see if they
After
can,
this pandemic, all of us will be special. All of us will have special.
I think so.
I'm special as well. I'm talking about, so they're trying to find out if they can see if there are any other alternatives by the chaos, even for supply teacher. I don't know how it works in your government or in your place or country, sorry. They have we are between self-employed and employees, so there is no distinction between. So at the moment we have zero income, and there are people with children as well, families without any income. So they have to pay bills. They have to think about, everyday life. It's quite disorganized as a system at the moment. I don't know if it's going to be workable in the next few weeks, because some union are quite involved in this matter. But honestly, we feel abandoned as a citizens.
Over here, when it all started, and they told that the first case was detected at our university, instead of smoothly getting into the transition of online learning, what they decided, they made the union sit with the university management, and they were like, first we need to find out how the payments will be done, how this will be done, and what is acceptable to everyone. So everything was shut down for a week. So they were like, okay, you put in your hours. We have a budget max. Of course, a lot of students have dropped out. Most of our students come from China. A lot of students have not enrolled because they were stuck in China. And some of them are still stranded in Thailand because they cannot reach. They have to finish their 14-day isolation period before they enter Australia. So we gave what we had in mind, the number of hours that we can put in, the number of hours that think we will ask the university to pay us, and the university has given us the max that they are willing to pay. And of course, we want our jobs as much as they want us. So we have reached a middle ground, and now we have actually started remote. But it's like a win-win for everyone. Yeah, they rushed in UK. They just rushed. Okay, everyone switch online. It's just like they turned off one button and they turned on the next one immediately without actually deciding what they will do.
But Beenish, can I ask you, are you doing like online sessions like this, or you're just posting the assignments and the students are
online proper? It's a 1 hour lecture, and it's followed by 1.5 hour where I am online, and there are discussion boards, and I make small.
But how many students, Beenish? At the moment, how many students take your class? 63. 63. That's a big number.
So I'm running two lectures for students that are in Australia, and then we had exchange students who were called back to their country. So I have students from Sweden and Switzerland who are joining in the session with the Australian students, but the students who are in the Pacific time from Canada and America, I run a separate session for them.
Wow.
How is the effectiveness of this whole thing when you guys have actually adapted to this? How do you actually see it? Is it effective enough?
I think it's adversely affecting primary, secondary, elementary, all of them.
I think your university, that's different.
Education is not affected.
University works in a different way.
Yeah. I think with schools, there's always problem with the children, obviously, to put them online and if they're serious or not. Who is taking the class, the mother or the child, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, even with my kids, I'm finding it
I was about to ask.
Teaching and teaching them. It's hard.
Even for GCSE, I don't know if GCSE, I don't know if you know OA levels for exams, it's going to be in a way they pass them. So that is why they don't take these 3-4 months seriously as a courses online, I'm honest with you.
It's a good time for the students who are not good in studies. It's a really good time for them. Because on the basis of their predictive exams, they're just getting into university. For really smart students, it's a really hard time because they have worked really hard to be in front of the competition, and now they're nowhere. They're with everyone in the same line.
But how would the universities pick the students, then obviously there has to
On
be
the
some.
basis of their predictive assessments. School
But that means that if you have not studied all year, that does not mean that, the good universities will take them. So I guess there's still going to be some check and balance, right?
No, but if you have been the teacher's pet and you got really good score while in school, you're going to get into a really good university.
Yes, I'm Kanekay. So I work as a research fellow in Queen Margaret University. What's happening in our university is basically it's very interesting because I don't teach, so I'm a researcher, so I wasn't involved in that part at all. But as a researcher, we do research internationally. So, for example, the papers that I am involved, they look at child protection in Senegal, Uganda, Guatemala, and recently I started working in another project which focuses on Sierra Leone. So my story actually is very different. So when this COVID situation started escalating in UK, so people, they didn't really know how to react in our university, for example. So they tried to switch all the teaching to online, but they did it gradually, mostly because they, I don't think they had enough capacity as well as platforms to ensure that online is transferred to, teaching is transferred to online smoothly. But also, rules for traveling, that was a little bit unclear because I was meant to travel to Sierra Leone on the 14th. And we checked with the High Commission of Sierra Leone in the UK, like a day before our actual departure was planned to happen. And they said there were no restrictions. And in the evening, the government of Sierra Leone issued a restriction to people coming from more than 50 cases of COVID to put them into quarantine for 2 weeks. So I flew to Paris, and then I was joined by my colleague, and then we had to take a decision whether to continue or whether to stay. And it was very difficult because it's unprecedented, you don't know, your perception of risk is so different. I have never been exposed to any viruses before, like SARS or swine flu. I was lucky enough, to live far from those viruses. So I thought, what's the big deal, But my managers, they luckily convinced me not to go, which was a good decision because after, when I came back, we are in a complete lockdown at the moment. And, I have 3 children. So, and my husband, in Scotland, we are just alone, like we don't have extended family. So basically, if, for example, my husband was alone with the children and I was stranded in Sierra Leone, it would be like a big catastrophe probably for our family. But from my perspective, I really appreciated my managers, but I think that universities and many countries, I think they have never experienced that and they don't know. So they are just putting rules, like coming up with processes to address this issue on spotlight as it develops. And when was it? On Friday, I actually joined a WebEx talk by a professor in Singapore. And it was very interesting because when SARS broke out, they were affected by it quite significantly. So in 2008, and after that, they put so they came up with a lot of legislation, with a lot of rules, what we are going to do in case of another epidemic in future. And this time, they were much well prepared than the rest of the world. So they were sharing their, experience and etc. So my experience has been kind of varied. So I am here in UK, our teaching is now totally online. My colleagues are teaching online. I'm working from home. I'm a researcher, and I also originally I come from Kyrgyzstan, which is Central Asia, and their response was very interesting because they don't have a strong health system. They are low middle income country, and in the moment they had 3 cases of COVID, they just decided to shut down the borders and impose like complete lockdown. So that is the response. And I totally understand. On the one, first I was like, oh my God, from human rights perspective, like how could they do that? That is too much. Like Yeah, but on the other hand, like if I was there as the head of government, probably, if I don't have money to treat all those people, in case, like, I don't know, like 20% of population gets this virus, how would I cope? I mean, that would be horrible. Even my parents, for example, when I talk to them, another thing that I wanted to note is that all the information, it says that the symptoms are mild, and people who are most at risk are those who have either like underlying conditions or old people. But in countries like Kyrgyzstan, where a non-communicable disease like diabetes, cancer, heart disease are very, very common. Like these are actually among 5 factors that kill people in countries like Kyrgyzstan. So this virus becomes very, very dangerous for those countries. So like my parents, for example, my mother had cancer a few years ago. She has high blood pressure. She has diabetes, but she's just 65. So she is under risk. So it's quite terrifying. And so the country in Kyrgyzstan is in complete lockdown. And again, going back here, for example, in UK, they want to offer businesses, people, some kind of compensation, at least. But those countries won't be able to do that. So people are completely left to their own terms. Upsetting, and I don't even know what to do. But obviously, like organizations like, for example, IMF, they started giving some money. And again, we know all the system, corruption. So one hopes that those money reaches the ones who need most, It just signals the weaknesses we have in governance in such a situation. I think, I guess all along the system should be strong to cope with this epidemic. But those countries which have already weak governance, corruption, high levels of corruption, inequalities, they will probably suffer most. Yeah.
But I want your take from different perspectives, like somebody's in UK, in Australia, how do you see the future? What is going to happen? And what do you want to see? How can we proceed in this this whole scenario after this pandemic is over?
Okay, let me start.
Sure.
I would love to give my 2 cents to it.
Please.
Well, okay. What I teach is I'm teaching transportation. So my aim and my goal and my entire department, our goal is to tell people to use public transportation and stop using private transportation. What I see the future in Australia is that people will actually prefer to work remotely, and they would actually prefer using public transportation, and they will stop using private transportation. So for me, I see a very bright future because Australia is probably the only country that had not accepted remote working. And this is just the high time. They're literally embracing it. Over here, it was still the time where a manager would love to see the employee in the office at the working hours. So of course we had peak hours and we had congested time. There was no flexibility. But now it's just everyone is loving it. People in Australia are going crazy posting their workplace photos and how I'm managing work from home. How is it? How things are different from the actual norm. So I think with teaching, of course, students had the opportunity even before our lectures were recorded. They were available online because if there was a clash in different courses, they were allowed to attend our classes online or even watch the recordings later. So now they have the full option. They can be at home. They can be in their home country and attend everything. So I think that's quite positive.
At the university level,
That's good.
I feel like that they're a bit more advanced. The fact that you already had the lectures recorded, they were still available on. That's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, but I don't know how it's going to work in the lower
other parts of the world.
At that stage, you really need social interaction. You're more into community building than anything else.
Yeah, with my son, this is exactly actually what they're doing. He's 13 and he has the homework first thing in the morning. I forgot it's Monday. I have no clue of time now. I worked out of home anyways. But now, first thing in the morning, he's like, Mom, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do this and this. And the classwork is actually already uploaded there. He also have the explanation from, so there are no online classes per se because, he's in high school, but they have the explanation of what they are supposed to be doing or whatever, and they're supposed to read it and do it themselves. So we were speaking yesterday to another panel, and I kind of like the fact that he's very independent and he's actually thinking ahead of time what he needs to do how he has to spend his day. If he wants to play and have the game time, he needs to make sure he's studying at certain times, and he's just doing it himself, and I don't have to do anything actually. So in some ways it works.
What about kids under 10? It's the kids under 10 that are
Yes.
struggling.
I'm, you know, behind my interest of, you know, teaching, because part of when you teach, you learn as well about how it should be life in a way, you know, through students, because students are a value, an additional value asset to your life. That's the point, most important aspect. You start to think about how is important life in this particular time, okay? And life leads you, us as well, not just you, but us as a people, to become less selfish, self-centered.
It's okay. It's like every region is trying their best. Basically, in Pakistan, it's like completely a different sort of a situation altogether. There is some sort of a, I would say, holding back from our government in terms of actually adapting towards a system, or in terms of adapting towards a certain change due to the situation that is currently right now. These case scenarios and these case studies should be really good insights for us to actually adapt towards.
In the rest of the world, it's always the government that gives the perspective and the private sector follows. In Pakistan, unfortunately, the private sector has to give a perspective, and
Exactly.
the government just copies and pastes. So probably the private
I
need to adopt a system which should be easy and manageable for everyone. Something like, just like Allama Iqbal Open University.
We were talking about structure yesterday. So once there's something in
There has to be a structure before you implement something, obviously. But over here right now, the 2 months break is what they're looking at. Everybody's looking at, because, you know, it's the summer vacations time, and, you know, everything is going to stop. Obviously, the schools are going to, in any case, they were supposed to close for 2 months. So now at the moment, I think that is not prioritized by the government right now, the education part. That will come later. Here, at the moment, it's the survival part. You know, how to live through this, you know. All the people that we keep hearing the stories about, that they're not getting enough food to eat and stuff like that. So I think the clarity here right now is the survival, and the education part comes later. So maybe we can, you know, make a structure, Saad. And I really like what is happening in Australia and how they got there. Let's structure it and then take it forward.
Originally, I'm from Kyrgyzstan, that's in Central Asia. So I'm mentioning that because I know the context of Central Asia and what's happening in the developing world. Being close to Russia, Russia, it's like kind of unique in its own way due to sanctions from the West, due to being isolated and not trusting the government. That seems to be an important issue, because when government introduces the quarantine, the way the common people just react on the things that are imposed by the government, it's different in the UK and in the countries like with the more authoritarian background. Also, I'm in the education system here in the UK. I teach in Strathclyde University, and I'm kind of a little bit familiar what's happening in the education system with the coronavirus outbreak. So, well, my take on that, I mean, the whole world completely was caught off guard. We didn't know what's going to happen. No one knew how serious it will be. The implications are like, no one knew. Of course, it will be lots of difficulties, but it also brings lots of interesting opportunities. So, of course, we at the moment with anything new, we are caught off guard. It's going to cause lots of chaos, but we need to learn from it and just see what we can use. So yeah, as it was mentioned by Mariam, yes, we are still on that stage where we kind of trying to see what to do with it. And of course, the priority number one, it's just to go through that, trying to survive.
It will be at least 3 months, because China is now kind of December. So That's
in the news yesterday, it was mentioned 6 months, so nothing will change much till October.
Yeah, that's the new thing.
So,
and they also said that 6 months might be this kind of lockdown, but they may extend it to October, where you'll have to keep the social distancing as well. So that means that, I don't know, no play groups for the kids, I guess. Keeping away, you'll have to still, keep the kids at home. We don't know how long it's gonna last.
well, on my personal opinion, things could work like that, like government says here in the UK, and in general in the developed world, probably it would be okay, just because economy is kind of much stronger here than in the developing world. So in Kyrgyzstan, for example, in Russia, let's take it Russia. In Russia, the Moscow, the biggest city, was in lockdown as of today. And they said only for 1 week. We will just do it for 1 week. Of course, we know now, being like much before the Russia just at the very, very beginning of that path. And they naively think it's going to be fine in a week's time. Of course, we know it's not going to be 1 week. And the first thing that come to my mind in Kyrgyzstan and in Russia as well, the people are much poorer. I don't think they would be able to sit at home because there is no income. Here in the UK, in the US, government is kind of saying, okay, we'll give you money, we'll give you something to live on, food supplies, and these things could probably go on for some time. But in Kyrgyzstan, like week, 2 week top, then the people will have to eat something, they will go out on streets, and then there will be the clash between the government and people. Because government want to keep it down, people need to survive, to eat, without government being able to help, something will have to give. And then of course, the second dimension comes into the play, like trust of the people to the government. In Kyrgyzstan and in Russia, the trust to the government infrastructure is really, really low. Again, just going through some social media sources, there are lots of opinions. Some say it's just someone's just set up, either to earn some money through the financial markets or just for the political gains, and everyone is trying to make like their interpretation of things. Facebook being a platform where everything is done like informally, the positive things out of this experience is people get much closer to the family values. You've got time to play with kids, like because you don't have anything else to do. So those values are kind of being brought to the forward. Local communities, speaking to your neighbors. I mean, I didn't speak to them like much. Now you've got opportunity, like just saying, do you need anything? Is there anything I can do for you? These kind of things. So this is positive. The other positive thing is I, being in the education system myself for quite a long time, I think that the current education system needs to be kind of reshaped somehow. I have no idea how, but the just traditional way, coming to the class and just passing message, like doing a lecture, and then they just passively sitting there. It's not a good setup. It had to be changed somehow. I don't know. We discussed a lot with that with our students, and long before this whole thing came up, one of the I tell you what I teach. I teach different programs. One of them is management development program. As a part of this module, students will have to come up with certain business idea that they want to do, and then just do the business plan, just do a basic survey, try to calculate things, just do the survey and do basically basic analysis of the survey. And one of the guys which comes to my mind, they offered me, well, they said, what we will do as a team, our business idea is a big whiteboard. When a lecturer is speaking, we'd like to ask questions online, so it will come up, so we don't have to disturb the class, and we would be able to ask the questions, and then kind of a little bit interaction between the lecturer and the students.
It's like
And
Facebook
that-
Live
Yeah,
chat.
it's just like this Zoom
Yeah.
kind of setup.
You can actually ask questions on, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Or
so
Instagram actually does the same thing as well. You can have a live
Exactly.
session. You can have questions or comments coming.
yes, that was like about 2 or 3 years ago. Now I think we're moving in that direction. So it's in education system, probably from now on we'll use more of these online features.
It just reminds me of one of my friends who was taking a course a couple of years back. I did it from Walden University, and she was doing from Kaplan University. I was not supposed to be, I mean, we could discuss, not discuss. It was, the assignment is what mattered. For her, she had to stay online. And if she was not, let's say it was late or she slept and she did not do any interaction with the teacher or in the class, even online, just on a chat, would know that she is not participating and she would flunk it. Actually had to be attentive and make sure that you are actually participating in the live discussion. And if you didn't, you will not score anything. You will not, they will just flunk you. So that was maybe 7 years ago.
Yeah. I don't know if it's relevant or not. The one just crazy idea came to my mind just this morning. In Bishkek, again, in the capital, you know how, probably you don't know, the heating system in the post-Soviet countries is made like centralized. So basically the whole city has like big pipes, which comes to every house. And then it centrally, it's a big, huge facility where the coal is getting burned, and through this pipe, the heat, the hot water goes through the whole city. And that's how basically electricity, the heating system in the country works. And I think maybe 5 years ago, there was a big renovation of that place. We've got new pumps, new things, and it just coincided, I think 4 years ago, the pollution in the city is just skyrocketed. I mean, it's a few days, I think, in this year, it actually was worst city in the world in terms of pollution. So it's just so bad that apparently, like, people were advised to stay home rather than going outside because it was so not safe to go outside. And the politicians and people started to debate, is it that or is it just cars? We don't know who is causing this big pollution, because at the same time the amount of cars going out on streets also increased. And with that lockdown, this gives, I think, perfect opportunity for us to test with no cars being on the street and just seeing the level of pollution.
Yeah.
So it's perfect opportunity for tests like this. I'm just thinking, I mean, it's just what happened over the years with the society. I mean, before everyone lived in the more traditional society where parents, children, family members all lived quite closer together. Pakistan, Kyrgyzstan, I think it's more, I think maybe Italy as well to a certain extent, more traditional societies where the family kind of more or less closer to each other. Maybe answering your question, one of the solutions will be just going back to just revitalize these like relationships. Maybe the answer will be probably just returning back to the traditional values. Not for children.
Yeah, the thing is that I wanted to say something also.
Hey.
I'm talking from UAE. Hey, hi. I was trying to talk before, but the thing is that we have started doing distance learning here, even for the primary grades, even for the elementary grades, and it's going fine because we have not only educated the parents for that, and the students are included, and we have a lot of children who are showing up for lessons. And
Irfana, can you please elaborate on that? How are you doing that? How did it start? Did you train the teachers and the children first? And
yes,
how did?
Because as soon as the lockdown was announced, because for us UAE started, I think, very early. and they have really been very vigilant. And we still we have curfew for last 1 week. We like from 8 o'clock till in the morning, nothing is open. Nobody can even come out of their buildings. Nobody is allowed to move out. And with that kind of situation scenario in mind, we already started learning about it. The children, before the children, the teachers were trained. We were trained immediately when the fear started up. So we were given online classes, and with that we started with Teams. Some schools are using Zoom, some are using Teams, but all of UAE is on distance learning program. Nobody is allowed to go out of it. So we are doing, even I'm going to start doing my assessments this week.
Was
So
this implemented by the government, Irfana? Was it implemented by the government, or
yes,
was it
yes,
self-opted?
yes, it is. No, it's not self. It's a government initiative, and for all the schools it's mandatory. Like all the teachers, it was mandatory for schools to report that all the teachers are aware, they've done the courses, and it was not for them. Like we are on roll, and every day we do our attendance. We stay like 4 hour working hours on online, and so.
Sorry, one more question, Irfana. Is this like is it a video call, or is it just the posting of assignments and children can do it?
No, we're not posting assignments. We are doing proper classes, but it's like we're sharing videos of the lessons. We are making PowerPoints. We are even making online exams. We are using different resources. Like there are so many online programs which can do quizzes, which can. So we are using even whiteboards on Teams. Teams has whiteboards also. So we are using a lot of resources, and we're getting trained about it. It's like even this week we have few trainings going on. It's like for us, working from home is more hectic. We have longer lessons, and we have to be more vigilant because there is a regular check. There are people coming from the government who are checking on us. So it's basically really hard. But even if it is hard, children are not wasting their time, and the curriculum is going on even for the schools, like leaving out the universities and colleges, but the schools are functioning on this. So
then, Irfana, I have a question. How do you make sure that that it's authentic, that the child is sitting there on the other side?
Yeah, because we have games and online games created, which are including the children, and then they are responding, and they have to add on, and they have to play online with us. So that way we have proper attendance. So it is like everything is virtual, but it is not as good as the real classroom, but still it is not bad. We are still functioning. Like it's not a total shutdown for schools, but we would like to go back to our classrooms, because that way things are manageable. But as long as the situation is there, because living in the situation here, it's a little bit of a crackdown, like curfew is on, so things are not normal. They are trying to sanitize the whole country, and we are trying to participate in that also. So for us to manage life on regular basis is really hard, because like as an individual living in such crisis, it's difficult.